With no memory of his life, Thomas enters a world where other boys have the same condition and are trying to escape the world, which is the maze. This is my book review of The Maze Runner. A few weeks before I went to see The Maze Runner in theaters, I read the book. And two reasons why I mainly read the book was to see if it was any good to see in theaters, and to see why everybody was split on the book. Because before I read the book, I was asking some of my friends and some other people who have read the book what they thought about it. And the overall consensus of the book was that people were split on it. They were split 50-50 on the book, whether it was good or bad. And I have to tell you that after reading the book myself, I can say that the book is an alright read. The good points. Usually for all my book reviews, I say that the number one thing coming out of the book is the writing by the author of that book. And this book is no different because James Dashner does a good job of writing. And the best aspect about his writing, in my opinion, is the mystery and suspense. And I really liked it sometimes when the mystery and suspense crisscross with one another at points. And the reason Dashner did a good job of writing these aspects was because right off the bat, in the first few pages of the book, you're already asking yourself, what is this place? Who are these people? Why are they here in the first place? What is the maze? How long have they been here? Has anybody died? And why aren't the group of boys telling Thomas, what's going on? Because they're keeping everything a secret to Thomas. So I think Thomas was a good character because of that aspect, which is that he's sort of a conduit between us and the book, since he's asking the same questions. And what I meant when I said that the mystery and suspense crisscross one another is that you want to know the answers to some of the questions, but for some questions you don't know if you want the answer to them because you don't know if it's going to go one way or another. Because if an answer goes one way, then it's okay, the character is fine, but if another answer goes another way, then it's oh god, the character's in danger. Dashner also did a good job with setting up this world. Because I was picturing in my mind what the Glade looked like, and I thought the Glade looked really cool in my head. And even though it was the cover of the book, I was trying to imagine what the maze looked like, and in my mind the maze looked cool as well. And speaking of setting stuff up, I thought that Dashner did a good job of setting the characters up of the first book. And I thought that he did a good job of developing those characters in the first book. Another thing that Dashner does well with his writing is that he describes the grievers really creepily and freakishly. Because once I read the description for the first time for the grievers, I was thinking to myself and thinking in my head what these creatures looked like, and once I pictured that in my mind, I was oh my god, that is really freaky. Because what I pictured in my head was the stuff of nightmares. The only two other things I can say about Dashner's writing are that there are some surprises that are built into the mystery of the book, where some of those surprises, when they're revealed, they're shocking, and sometimes when those surprises are revealed, they're somewhat shocking. Another thing I want to say is that even though I didn't really like the ending of the book, I can say that it ended in a way where I want to read the sequel to the book. The bad points. I guess the thing that I hated about this book is the last 100 pages or so of it. Because within those last 100 pages, Dashner tries to give us surprises that you wouldn't see coming, but those surprises didn't really work and you're confused as to why he did those surprises. And when the book ended, I didn't feel oh my god, I need to read the next book. I mean, I did feel that way, like I said in the good points. I felt when the book ended, I was okay, I will read the next book. But in a series of books, I like it when the book leaves us with a good, satisfying cliffhanger where you feel oh my god, I need to read the next book. But in the first book of the Maze Runner series, I was okay, I'll read the next book. And I'll talk about the ending of the book and some of the surprises that were within the last 100 pages of the book in the spoiler section. The only other thing I can say that I didn't like about the book is that Dashner puts this, I guess you can say, plot device in a way in the book where the two main characters use, and you can tell that they're going to use that plot device later on in the future books. And at first I thought that plot device was a little bit cool, but then when I was starting to think about it more and more, I was I don't know about that plot device actually. And I'll explain myself later on in the spoiler section what I'm talking about. Alright, so my rating for this book is a 2.75 out of 4 stars. Originally, I was going to say 3 out of 4 stars, but then as the days went on and on, I was thinking like about the bad points of this book, and I was like, yeah, this book is an alright read. If you're into young adult books, then I think you'll like this book. And if you're into mystery, then I think you'll like this book as well. Alright, spoilers for the book, The Maze Runner. If you haven't read this book yet, then get over now, because I'm going to be spoiling the last 100 pages or so. So why would you want to know the last 100 pages so if you want to read it for yourself? I mean, does that make sense? I don't know. So the spoiler I want to talk about first is with the plot device, I guess you can say, with Thomas and Teresa. And I don't really know if you call this a plot device or what, but what I'm talking about is with their telepathy. And when I read this for the first time in the book, and I was like starting to get used to it and everything, and I sort of got used to it after I finished the book. But after a few days reading the book, I was starting to think to myself about that plot device. I was thinking to myself, I don't know if telepathy fits in this world that James Dashner wrote. I mean, maybe in the sequels, Dashner will explain about the telepathy and everything, but for right now, I don't like it. I guess I forgot to say in the bad points that even though the surprises that Dashner was trying to write in the book were a big problem with the last 100 pages or so, I think that another problem, a smaller problem, with the last 100 pages or so was the pacing. Because I thought the last 100 pages or so were going really fast. I was like, oh my god, wow, a lot of stuff is happening. And sometimes that can be a good or bad situation, and this one was a bad situation. So the two major surprises that Dashner was trying to give to us were with Albie's death and when Chuck sacrificed himself to save Thomas from Galley's knife. Alright, for Albie, I did not know why he had to die. I mean, I get he was sort of getting crazy and everything and that he didn't want to get out of the maze. But I thought that his character arc or something wasn't really done yet. And I thought that his character wasn't fully fleshed out, and I thought that he could have been used in the sequels of the series. And as for Chuck sacrificing himself, okay, yeah, I get that one too. The reason Chuck sacrificed himself was because he was a friend of Thomas and everything, and he didn't want to see Thomas die. But when the events are unfolding in the book, and as I'm reading the book, as like the events are happening, I'm just thinking to myself, man, this is going by too fast. And when Chuck died, I was like, okay, I don't know why he had to die. Because he was a character like Albie, he could have been used in the future of the series. But I guess the reason they died was so that Thomas could get more character development in the sequels. And I hope that character development is good in the sequels because Chuck was a really good character in my opinion. Yeah, and as for Galley, I didn't think that Galley lived. Because in the Glade, when the Grievers come in the Glade for the first time and when Galley is the first one to get killed, I thought he died. Because the Griever got him and then the Griever went to like its ball form and started rolling and it looked like Galley was dead because Thomas saw his legs flipping like a little bit out of the Griever's skin. But no, he shows up at the end of the book and he's like under control by Wicked. And when this was happening, I was sort of like, okay, like, what's going on here? But after he threw the knife at Thomas and it hit Chuck instead, and when Thomas got really angry and went to Galley and like punched him to death it seemed. Because right now I think Galley got punched to death by Thomas. And I didn't understand the reason why to bring back Galley if he was going to die anyway. And I guess the final thing I want to spoil is that the group is saved by these outside rescuers that come in and take them on this bus. And I guess this is the only real good thing that I liked about the last 100 pages or so, because as they go out of the maze, Thomas and others see that the surroundings around the outside of the maze is just like this huge desert. And when I was thinking about this, I was like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? I know that early on in the book, there was something called the flare that people were talking about. And I sort of understood that the flare equaled, like, the sun, or fire, or heat, or something like that. But I just thought it was a little bit cool and weird at the same time that in the first book, we were entirely in this maze where there's greenery and stuff all around. And then all of a sudden, we get into, like, this huge desert. And then we later find out in the epilogue of the book, and yeah, I found out a little bit weird also that there's an epilogue in the first book of the series. But anyways, we find out that the people of Wicked tricked the group into thinking that they were saved, only to be sent into a next set of trials, I guess. And like I said, after I read the last page of the book, I was like, okay, I'll read the next book. So that's my book review for The Maze Runner. Hope you guys liked it, and other than that, guys, that's it.